Welcome to Inside the Noise by Guitar Center, where we interview the artists, the leaders, and the innovators in the music industry. I'm Gabe Dalporto, CEO of Guitar Center. Let's go inside the noise. Hey, this is Gabe Dalporto here. We are at the original C.F. Martin factory. Started off as a little house over here, then it built into a small workshop. Over time, they added on more wings, more levels, until they eventually outgrew it and moved to their more modern factory. We're going to have a great conversation with Thomas Ripsam and can't wait to go inside and see what it looks like. I really would like to ask you, what is your personal connection to music?
My personal connection with music, first of all, thank you for being here. I think it's been fabulous. Our teams have spent some time together and we love our relationship. So thank you very much. So my personal connection with music started probably when I heard Elvis Presley on a single from a collection that my dad had. And the acoustic guitar, Elvis's acoustic guitar and Scotty Moore's Gibson ES-295 really stood out to me. And from then on, I was hooked to guitars. During my teens, I started to play and learn and play. And I collect. I love to write music and record all that. And I knew about Martin for a long time, way long before I actually started the company. So my wife calls me a nerd when it comes to guitars and music, and I'm pretty proud of that.
And then how did you get connected to Martin?
Yeah. Well, before Martin, I had a 25 plus career in consulting. So worked with a lot of companies in consumer, retail, tech on their biggest strategic issues, which I really loved. But I also was big on creative. And, when Chris Martin retired or announced his retirement, I reached out to the search company that undertook the search for the CEO. We connected and went through the process. And for me, it was like a dream come true. Because what really excited me about kind of this opportunity was I knew Martin and I have a love for the company and the brand, but I also thought the industry is changing at all levels, literally at all levels. And I thought my background could be helpful to work with the Martin team to really think about how do we continue to celebrate our legacy and heritage, but also have this one step in the future that Chris talked about earlier when you talked to him.
Yeah, it's such a remarkable company. It's nearly 200 years old. We got a chance today to tour the museum, and just from those first early instruments through today, you can see the progression, the innovation, all the pivots. It's just a company that is never satisfied and always improving and always changing to meet the customer. So incredible legacy. Tell me a little bit about how you respect that legacy, but also push the company into the future. And like, where do you see the company evolving?
Yeah. Well, I think in order to respect the legacy, I think it's important to understand what makes this legacy, right? And in Martin's case, I think it's the incredible craftsmanship combined with the evolution and innovation over time. I think it's about some values that really started with the first Martins, which was all about, right, we're in it for the long run. We really care about people, relationships, connection with artists, I think for a long time was really important. And, some of these instruments and products that Martin created, they don't just last for a few decades. They last for a lifetime or multiple lifetimes. So I think understanding that and the impact that Martin in the acoustic world really had on Western music culture, the profound impact, I think is important. And personally, as a player, when I think about some of the artists that inspired me, that were and continue to be connected with Martin, like a David Gilmour or an Eric Clapton or Steve Howe or Joan Baez, there's so many that personally meant something to me. I think it's just keeping that in mind and then celebrating that going forward, right? And sometimes, frankly, we look into our history to find opportunities to bring something back that worked. Mm-hmm. And could work again. Like Chris talked about, that at some point Martin had stopped making D45s, and now they're very popular, and certainly a lot of people that love that instrument, and we brought it back. So it's looking into the past, but then also really thinking about where's the world going.
Speaking of the D45, I just bought a D45, but it was the modern deluxe version. Mm-hmm. And so it is both a representation of history, but also the future. So I'm kind of straddling those two with you. You talked about your people, and the thing, that really has struck me about getting to know Martin, getting to know you, but getting to know the people that work here is they have a lot of passion for the brand. Many of them their families have worked for the company for generations. And it's not just, I think, your typical employer-employee relationship. There's an incredible amount of respect for the employees, and both ways, actually. And I think you can see that coming through in the workmanship.
Hey, I just want to say thank you so much for listening to the podcast. We've actually been really overwhelmed by the response so far, so thank you for that. We have also noticed that a lot of you haven't subscribed yet. We have incredible guests coming up. I'm not even allowed to tell you who they are, but trust me, you don't want to miss this. So hit subscribe. That way you don't miss an episode. Now back to the program.
If someone joins the company, tell me what the next 30 years for them looks like.
Oh, the next 30 years. Well, it depends on where you work, which part. But I think when somebody joins us, we want to make sure that people feel welcome from the beginning, that they understand that there's a possibility to spend maybe 30 years, but that's going to be a marathon, not a sprint, and we will be with them along the way, right? So initially, of course, our people go through onboarding and training, and we believe in opportunities, so we rotate people, and I think that's a big part, and challenge people. We also have things like profit sharing, right? To provide skin in the game, and we do a lot to build our community, right? So people spend time together, not just at work, outside of work also. And then the other thing I mentioned, community. For us, it's not just important to be part of the Martin community. We feel very strongly that you have to show up where you live, right? And that means many of our people volunteer in many organizations in the Lehigh Valley or within the music industry. They may sit on boards. And so we like people to bring themselves into the process and show themselves, because I think that benefits everybody.
Fantastic. When you kind of look forward in terms of your product innovation, what frontiers do you see out there? How do you push things forward?
Yeah. Well, I think there are different frontiers. I mean, there's the materials we use where, on the one hand, we still rely on a lot of traditional and exotic tonewoods, and we want to continue to do that. But those tonewoods get harder and harder to source, and they become more expensive. There's more regulation for many of these tonewoods. So we are constantly looking for alternative materials. Ebony is one example, where traditionally we used ebony for fingerboards, which we still do, but we also used Richlight, which is an alternative to ebony. So we're trying to use multiple paths, right? We also, the other thing we are doing is to find new ways to use materials. Like our D35, has a multi-piece back, where traditionally maybe we had one piece, then we had maybe two pieces, three pieces, right? It has a wedge. And so materials is one thing. I'm a big believer in the aesthetics are a big part of what gets you excited, not just the tone and the sound, but the aesthetics as well. I think we're only at the beginning of what's possible in coming up with new designs. Like earlier this year, we introduced the CEO 11, which is a blue guitar. We don't use blue that often. I love colors, and it's maybe not the one product that covers everything. But interestingly, there were a lot of people who provided us feedback that they are totally enamored with that blue. And so it's those kind of things, right?
So I'm going to take my jacket off because we are sitting in the original Martin factory that was established in 1859 that does not have air conditioning. And I
was thinking the same. I'm not going to take my t-shirt off. I'm going to keep my t-shirt on.
But it is quite warm and I'm sweating a little bit. So
same here.
But speaking of, we're in the original manufacturing facility. It is amazing. You can just feel and sense the history here. And it's cool to see how it started as a little building and then it added on and then started building up and floor after floor. And we kind of find ourselves here. And now you have this brand new, amazing, state-of-the-art facility, but there's just so much history here. When you think about your connection, again, going back to your connection to music, and I totally relate where you come from, right? I didn't spend my career in the music industry, but I've always been a musician. And I've had a band for all over a decade, and like it was really part of my DNA. Yeah. Not so much my professional life, and I feel very privileged to be here, and I imagine you feel the same. Who do you see as like your musical inspiration?
Oh wow, that's it's definitely evolved over time. I started with, I mentioned Elvis Presley, that music, rock and roll, and then got into blues, got into folk, got into hard rock, like Ritchie Blackmore and Deep Purple. So, but I've gone through phases, and at the core, I just love sounds, and I love to explore sounds and hear different music, different artists. I find it all inspiring, and so it's a continuous journey of discovery into a universe, right? And that's what inspires me. There are many players. I don't have just one, right? I have lots of different artists, guitar players, drummers. I love drumming, or keyboard players, whatever. I find it exciting.
Yeah, I think the first band I really got into was Quiet Riot.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if you remember them, that was amazing. I'd turn it all up to 11 and just blast my boombox.
Yeah, and with me, it's funny. I love to talk about kind of my music loves. I love bluegrass, but I also love metal. And I often say, you know what, these two genres, they have a lot in common. And then people look at me like, but if you think about kind of the focus on outfits that you wear, not that the outfits are the same, but how you dress, right? There's a bluegrass style and there's a metal style. And then, of course, the technical brilliance, the speed.
Yeah.
So the energy, and so I find that super cool.
So we should have a joint bluegrass metal festival.
Exactly.
That's coming. That's going to happen. You said something really interesting. Like these instruments sometimes can be handed down, generation to generation. I personally experienced that. I inherited 2 guitars from my father when he passed away.
Right.
But you think about, you can buy an entry level product, but chances are you're not going to have that 10 years from now. Or you can buy a quality instrument like you make, and that could be here 150 years from now, right? And your great grandkids are playing it. So when I toured the factory, I'm struck by the craftsmanship, just the complexity and the care that goes into manufacturing these instruments. And the outcome is something that, I can't believe, I can buy for the price I'm paying. Right. I mean, it seems like they should cost 3 or 4 times as much, given how much labor and work and materials and everything that goes into this.
And other things you may spend on this kind of during these times, right? I mean, think about your cell phones or your PDAs, whatever, smartphones, tablets.
Yeah,
cost a lot of money, and then you replace them with the next generation.
Right. So, I have a little bit of an instrument problem, and my wife's like, what did you just spend last month? And I said, it's not a depreciating asset. This is going to increase in value over time. This is an investment.
Yes.
I buy a new iPhone. That thing is worthless in 4 years.
Obsolete.
I buy, a quality instrument. That thing's worth more in 4 or 5 years. So I think that's my investing strategy, maybe. So what would you, final question, an opportunity for you to connect with our customers. What would you tell them? Why should they consider a Martin guitar?
So when I take one of my Martin guitars out of the case at home, my usual emotional reaction is, wow, right? I may not say the word, but that's how I feel when I open the case. So I think there's something there about kind of a companion that in my mind, it's almost like a friend. And that friend lives with me through ups and downs. I buy guitars because I truly love them, right? I don't buy for investing reasons or so. In my case, I buy guitars because I love them. With Martin, I think what you get is something that lasts, and it will last with you. Maybe it will last with your children, right, or your family. And I think it is truly something special because the people that work on these instruments, you mentioned the care. I think they put a lot of love into the instruments, and the love is every single piece of the guitar that you see is made with care, attention, love, passion. And, these people, they really know when you use some organic materials, how do you best work them that you get the best looking, best sounding, best feeling instrument out there. And that's cool. And I think what's also cool is to be part of the Martin family and the Martin Club, especially if you think about how many of our artists that inspired us that played acoustic guitars have played them and continue to play them. So that's it for me.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a great conversation. Absolutely. And I hope everybody enjoyed learning about Martin. It's a fantastic brand. It's a family-owned business, and I encourage you to come by the stores, check them out, play a few, and you may just be able to buy love.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thanks, Gabe.
Thank you.
That was great.
Well, a big thank you to Thomas Ripsam and the Martin family for hosting us today. That was so inspirational to get to walk through the Martin factory, the original Martin factory. And then to also think about the legacy of this brand, how they've evolved over time, how they've pivoted and pivoted again as music and sound has changed, and embrace new technologies while also honoring the legacy and the quality and the past of the brand. Really just phenomenal experience. Also, I was inspired by how they take care of their employees, how they have multi-generational families working at the plant. So overall, just such a great experience, such an amazing brand. Thank you, Thomas, for hosting.